Hi. Can you try to speak, please?
Hello, this is
Yeah,
Fatih Kaya.
okay. We can hear you.
Thank you.
Perfect. You should be able to share your screen as well. Hello, Maria. Can you speak as well? Yeah, okay, we can hear you. All good.
Perfect.
You can see us, right? You can see the holding slide at least. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Just a slide. Yeah.
Okay, let's start. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's often the case if we start speaking, then the crowd will come in. Let's hope for the best. Yeah, thank you. Really a pleasure to welcome everyone. My name is Stefan Unbrock. I work for the World Meteorological Organization. Welcome to a session on strengthening the global goal on adaptation through adaptation to hydrology. That's a session which we will have for the next hour or so. We have four exciting speakers who are really heavily involved in the global goal on adaptation, and we hope for a good discussion. Maybe we just I introduce the speakers one after the other. We always have a 5-minute plus presentation or so, and then we enter the discussion. It's a pleasure now to start with the first speaker. But before we start, let me allow a few more words of framing the whole session. Some of us have been around the COP for quite a number of years, and some of us has been very heavily involved, in particular in the global goal and adaptation. And it is important to realize, since 10 plus years, I think we are discussing that, and we will hear about the latest developments in a minute. Setting goals is very important, but the performance management of any management goal is as important as the goal itself. If you want to really use a goal to drive progress, building resilience of society, being effective with stronger adaptation at the country level, is really important to, from the beginning, to manage the performance separately. So therefore, all the indicator discussion is a very important one. So I'm very much looking forward to hear about the latest about that, and also look about ways how can we use this to drive progress. What are the possibilities to make them effective at the country level to really adapt strategies and policies. With this, it's a real pleasure to invite somebody who has been involved for quite a number of years in the global goal and adaptation, and very much in depth. Dr. Jose Guesti, he's the Senior Water and Climate Specialist at Sanitation for All, and he will give us a background presentation on an overview on the development of the global goal and adaptation. Over to you, Jose.
Thank you very much, Stefan. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, and thanks for the invitation to the WMO colleagues. So my role was to kick off the discussion by providing a little bit of a background on where the discussions that we are having at COP30 on the global goal on adaptation. I'm focused on indicators, where all this is coming from, right? So we have a few slides. And then it's good that we remember that the adaptation trajectory has been a little bit bumpy. And since 1992, with the Rio Conventions, adaptation had to slowly make its way into the negotiations and the convention itself. A major milestone was obviously the Paris Agreement 2015, COP21, where the so-called global goal on adaptation finally was crystallizing in the form of Article 7 of the Paris Agreement. The thing is that was very contested to get such an article consolidated and agreed as part of the Paris Agreement. And perhaps the consequences were that the text actually is calling for a global goal, but there were no targets, there were no real time bound, so it was pretty generic. And basically, Article 7 of the Paris Agreement calls for reducing vulnerability, increasing adaptive capacity, etc. Then parties obviously realized over a couple of years that progress was not as expected. And another major moment for the adaptation agenda comes at COP26 in Glasgow, where parties agree on a first 2-year work program to try to take the Article 7 into a little bit more granularity, right? That work ended in December 2023 at COP28 with the consensus and the adoption of a global framework for climate resilience. It's not a coincidence that many of us, we team up, right, to make possible a target on water and sanitation, as well as other 6 thematic targets and other 4 policy targets. It's important to know this. At the same time that parties agreed to this framework and the 7+4 targets, at the same time, in the same resolution, the parties agreed to focus the following 2 years in developing indicators for the global resilience framework. And here we are. We are at the end of this 2-year work program that was tasked to develop the indicators for the framework. It's important that we bring this into context because what is in the negotiation right now is the adoption of 100 indicators that technical experts have put on the table. Apart from the negotiation of indicators, it's important that we understand that right now in the negotiation room, the discussions go around the adoption of the indicators, but it's equally important that the resolution that it will be adopted next week is going to set up what is the focus of the work over the next 2 to 3 years. So it is very important that in addition to the work on the indicators, we pay attention to how parties agree on what will be the focus. In addition to that, there is yet another important track discussion and negotiation element, which is on the so-called transformative adaptation. Then, what we have right now on the table, thanks to the work of experts such as Thomas Daymaker, that will speak after, and 77 other experts, what we have on the table is an amazing screening of and a starting point of more than 9,000 indicators. Experts have been working over the last year to screen down and to propose a final list of 100 indicators. These indicators are the ones that are being negotiated right now, and we will see next week whether the full list of the 100 indicators is adopted or a subset of them. Obviously, from our side, from the water community, we are paying close attention to target 9A on water and sanitation, and we have 10 indicators proposed. We also keep a close eye to the biodiversity and ecosystems target with another 10 indicators. I just wanted to say that what we have on the table right now with these 100 indicators, we have a good correspondence and cross-references across thematic areas. We are happy to see that 54 of the non-water indicators refer back to water and sanitation indicators. At the same time, the water and sanitation indicators made a good job linking up to all other thematic areas. Now, my last 2 slides, before I get a warning, is that yesterday at the Water Pavilion, we had 2 sessions in which we bounced 10 key messages, and we turned our discussions around those. I think, and I have fellow colleagues here, I think we can give testimony that these 10 key messages have been kind of widely adopted. And I just wanted to conclude my intervention with these key messages. We have 5 key messages that relate to the adoption of the indicators. The first key message is that we are advising parties to take the whole lot of the 100 indicators, including the 10 indicators for water and sanitation and the 10 indicators for ecosystems. The risk we see is that a pick and choose from parties of certain indicators won't do, because it will disrupt the whole work of the experts. A second point is that, sorry, it's been challenged by some of the parties, some of the water and sanitation indicators. It's been said that they may be lacking a climate rationale. We want to contest this. The water and sanitation indicators on the table right now have a clear climate rationale when they are brought into geographical or time-bound context in the middle of a hurricane or in a drought-prone area. Some of the indicators related to water stress, to ambient water quality, or water efficiency have been challenged by lacking a climate rationale. We challenge back, saying that those have a clear climate rationale. In terms of another contested issue is transboundary. This is close to our heart. We know that 65% of the water courses are transboundary. So we are calling parties to bear in mind that the UAE framework for global climate resilience calls for taking care of cascading transboundary risk, and is water the sector that it's more likely bringing a reality through indicators on how this can be tracked. Then, obviously, we are calling for strong linkages between thematic and policy targets. And another key message in relation to indicators and the adoption is that water and sanitation stakeholders, thematic stakeholders, and custodian agencies of SDGs are ready to stand to support the inclusion of climate resilience into existing indicators and to develop methodologies. My last slide is with another set of 5 key messages. These key messages relate to what we would like to see in the resolution next week in relation to the work that is needed after COP30. So we understand that adopting indicators is just the first starting point, and much more work is needed to make adopted indicators operational, developing of methodologies, piloting in countries, working with national monitoring statistic offices, etc. Then, beyond the work that is needed to continue on indicators and operationalization of the indicators, we call for a focus on beyond tracking progress. We would like to see parties agreeing on how to continue over the next 2 years guiding progress and how to make the targets a reality on the ground. For this, we call for a stakeholder involvement. So we cannot forget that there has to be inclusive engagement of all stakeholders to make the implementation of the Global Resilience Framework true on the ground. Then also, one of our key messages is that there is already a diffuse kind of set of mandates within adaptation bodies, existing adaptation bodies. And last year at COP29, the Baku Adaptation Roadmap was launched. So this Baku Adaptation Roadmap will focus on implementation, but we would like to see that the synergies are maximized. And my last point is on transformative adaptation, because our key message is that parties, in our view, should not just single out one form of adaptation, and incremental adaptation and transformative adaptation are both needed for implementation of the framework. We'll leave it here.
Thank you very much, Jose. We move on to the next presentation, and it's now a pleasure to invite Dr. Tom Slaymaker. He's a senior statistics and monitoring specialist at UNICEF, and he's particularly, I think, well known for the work he and his team are doing in the wash sector for the JMP. But Tom will now guide us through the overview of global water-related indicators for the global goal. Please, Tom.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and thanks for the invitation to join this session. I'm going to try and pick up where Jose left off with a description of the process that has got us here to COP30. Thank you very much. We don't have time to go into a lot of detail about the indicators themselves, but there are a few key messages here. So the first was, that since June, there has been this enormous pressure to come up with a manageable set of no more than 100. And as Jose said, those are now being negotiated. But the experts' report has a lot of detail on those indicators. So if you haven't read it, I really recommend that you have a look and you can see what is being proposed, not just for water and the other thematic targets, but also the dimensional targets. And when we look at the water targets, you can see immediately that many of these will require some sort of information on hydrology. Climate information, risk information, hydrological information will be essential for the implementation of these different indicators. So we can take many examples, but 9A4, which is about developing integrated water resource management approaches, which incorporate an adaptation plan, looking at the basin level. These are things which are not currently done. They have been done at a national level, but to be able to disaggregate down to the basin level, you're going to need a lot of additional information in order to be able to calculate these indicators. 9A5, 9A6, we're talking about not only having access to services which are safely managed, but also services which are climate resilient. And so you will see the need for hydrological information throughout the indicators for target 9A. But I also wanted to highlight that we also have target 10A. And this one is one of the dimensional targets, which is about risk, vulnerability, and impact assessment. And so you'll see that the experts have recommended here that parties should be collecting information on multi-hazard early warning, climate risk information. There should be calculating and tracking the number of parties that have national meteorological and hydrological services. And all of these indicators, which are cutting across all sectors, are then expected to be disaggregated by the sectors and the thematic targets, including 9A, which is for water. So it's very important to understand that these indicators under the different targets are linking with each other. Next message is that the experts have recommended that there's a lot of work to be done. What the experts have recommended is a proposed set of potential indicators that parties could consider taking forward. But in order to take those indicators forward, there's a lot of work to do on the methodology, capacity building of parties to systematically collect this information, and also figure out the roles and responsibilities for compiling information and aggregating it and reporting it at the global level. So really the work starts here. We're hoping that there will be a successful outcome from COP30. The parties will agree to adopt and take forward these indicators, but then the implementation of the indicators is a huge task. I just want to take one example is the work that's already underway for further developing indicators for monitoring climate resilient WASH. So I work for the WHO UNICEF JMP, and we work together with the WHO UNICEF GLASS team together on different aspects of monitoring WASH services. And we've had a long process of review, which started last year and has continued this year, to consult very widely on what is out there already. What are the existing indicators? What are the existing data sources? How could they be brought together? We've had public consultations. We have established a technical working group to review the recommendations from those public consultations. And we had a long list of indicators, which has then been turned into a short list of indicators, which has been presented and has been feeding in to the work that's going on the global goal on adaptation. And if you're interested to look at the details of that list, you can see that the public consultation on the shortlist is going on right now. So you can see the type and level of detail that would be required in order to operationalize what is being discussed under the global goal. And once that shortlist has been finalized, we're planning to start piloting these indicators next year. So the WASH sector will go ahead and we'll start this work because we can all agree that it's very important. Hopefully, it can also be used to feed into the global goal on adaptation. The last thing I just wanted to highlight, when we talk about climate resilient water supply or climate resilient sanitation, we think about the service outcomes at the end. But what you see from the short list of indicators that has been proposed is that there are many other aspects that need to be taken into account in order to deliver those service outcomes. And those include policy actions, also actions taken by service providers, actions taken by users. So if we look just very quickly at what we have in that list, already you can see, for example, under institutions, the technical working group has recommended that we will need to have climate data and seasonal forecasts downscaled to a level at which WASH service providers can use them in order to deliver services. This is something which is not yet in place, but is going to be really important for delivering climate resilient WASH. If we take the example of coordination, with colleagues working on water resource management, there are many things that need to be in place here, but one of those is understanding the proportion of the population who are living in catchments where there is a water resource management plan that is addressing climate risks to water supply and to sanitation and to wastewater. So not only understanding the climate risks, but understanding how they are applying to the water supply and sanitation systems. And then just one more, because I know we're going to discuss this as a panel later. But when we think about the service functioning, and this is where we can bring it back to the global goal, if we are thinking about water supply and sanitation services, which are not only safely managed, but are also climate resilient, we need to have a way in which we are able to determine the population that is living within climate hazard zones. Different types of hazards, different parts of the country, and then we need to be able to understand whether they are able to maintain different levels of service in the face of climate-related shocks and stresses. So these are the things that we're talking about, the very practical operationalization, implementation of these indicators through national monitoring systems, and this is the work ahead. If you're interested to find out more, you can follow the links. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you, Tom. We have two more presentations. Are there any quick questions for clarification to the two speakers we had so far before we have the next two? We can do it interactive here a bit. There's a question. Please, Maureen from Ghana.
So thanks to all the presenters for their insightful presentations. I think my first question goes to our first speaker. You mentioned that you are still on the way of doing the implementation on how you can be able to strengthen these indicators for the global goal adaptation. But I want to know, what are the steps taken to make data available? Because if it comes to hydrology or the hydrology space, data scarcity is a big issue. In this implementation process, what steps are you taking up to make sure data is available to help in generation of these indicators, to help that even at the national level, these indicators can be used to make policies and decisions? And then to my the second speaker, pardon me if I couldn't get your name. You make a list of indicators for us. How do we link up to see progress made on this, especially tracking from the national level into these global inputs, and rate them, how do I put it, trying to track the progress of this to guide other processes and how donors or funders even push money into this event. Thanks.
Good. Who would like to start? Jose first, and brief answers, please.
Yeah, no, I will be brief. Thanks for the questions. When I was talking about implementation, I was more like in terms of not so much the implementation of the indicators, which obviously we agree is important, but the implementation of the actual framework and the targets. Yeah, I hear your point on the lack of hydrogeological data. I think where I'm coming from is as well the lack of understanding of the target itself. Our target, we need to think that our target is calling for reducing climate-induced water scarcity. And while what you say hydrogeological information is key, we still are to understand what is reducing climate-induced water scarcity. Not even the IPCC is able to tell us right now what is climate-induced scarcity, because the drivers of water scarcity are many: human, economical, physical, natural, etc. So where I'm coming from is like we still need work to unpack these concepts and definitions, because we are not even there yet. So we are aiming at reducing things, and hydrogeological information is important, but unpacking the concepts and getting consensus as to what does this mean is the first step.
Thank you. And Tom, on the involvement of countries?
So a very good question. So on the data side, what the experts have tried to do has to identify the types of data that are going to be important to support the implementation of the goal, and to list the potential national data sources. Now, the experts have been very clear that many countries do not yet have this type of information. But the first step is to do an assessment of data availability. And that will then inform efforts to strengthen data systems in order to support monitoring. There is some good experience from monitoring other water-related targets. So I've been working for many years on SDG monitoring, where there's a lot of ongoing capacity building of governments to monitor drinking water quality, wastewater treatment, things that have been part of the SDGs for many years. But it takes time, and we have to recognize it takes time, and we have to commit ourselves to building capacity. But the important thing is that we should be trying to understand, do we have the information we need to support adaptation? It should not be a condition for financing, but if we know that we don't have the data, and we know that we need it to adapt, then we should be able to attract financing to support the strengthening of data systems. So I think that's a very important difference. And this is something the parties will be discussing in the negotiations. How can we use this to bring the finance we need to build the data systems that we need to support our work? Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. We have two more speakers. The next speaker will be online. Can we see our colleague Fatih Kaya now? Yes. Good morning, Fatih. Fatih is in Geneva at the moment. He's a project officer in the field of hydrology, water resources, particularly in the field of flood forecasting. That's one of his specialties. And he will give the next presentation looking at the flood aspects to the global goal. Can we have his PowerPoint, please? Over to you, Kaya.
Oh, okay, I hope my PowerPoint is visible.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, colleagues. My name is Fatih Kaya. It's a pleasure to join the discussions. I kind of would like to contribute to discussions of my colleagues before me, especially on the transformational aspect of the indicators and as well as Operation Hydrology's contribution. So my presentation, throughout the presentation, I will try to answer 3 questions. The first one, how can global adaptation indicators evolve to better reflect performance of hydrological and cryosphere systems that support climate resilience? What opportunities exist to strengthen the adaptation indicators so they highlight how hydrological and cryosphere systems safeguard lives and livelihoods? And how can the WMO methodologies contribute to enhancing evidence base? And then throughout these questions, we would like to, together with you, I would like to explore how hydrological and cryosphere science can complement them and strengthen their uses. So throughout the indicators, when we look at them, so this is a kind of like overall image. So we see that like indicators, very clear categories, and then like they relate directly to floods, droughts, and water-related issues. They include early warning systems, water resources, agriculture, health, infrastructure, ecosystem, and human impacts of the climate hazards. Together, they show how widely floods, droughts influence every part of the adaptation, from food systems to health services to national planning. By understanding these categories clearly, we can have a better conversation about how to strengthen the systems that sits behind them. And then hereby, I would like to introduce you one of the operational hydrology practice of WMO. WMO, as you might know, we are organization, our standards contributed, developed by 193 countries. So one of these standards, we call it 1286. And then you see on the left side, so this is the end-to-end early warnings of the floods. And then this is developed into a further methodology, we call it National Capacity Assessment. And then together with combining with the multi-hazard early warning system assessments and also hydroresource assessments. Throughout these assessments, we tailor the methodology for donor needs to assess the country's operational hydrological capacities and tailoring projects and tracking the progress before, after, and during the project. This practice assesses basically the full operational hydromet value chain, including the institutions, observation network, data management, forecasting, service delivery, as well as sustainability. And across the assessments, we go through the 21 thematic categories, including extended hydrology and cryosphere modules relevant to the water issues, the flood, droughts, and hydrological services. And then we try to measure our hydrological stations functional. What is the data latency? Do we have rating curves? Do we have calibrated models? What is the forecast lead time? And what is the forecast skills? And are warning disseminated with redundancy? Are staff trained? Are able to operate the systems 24/7? And then this practice, we have results we have results of 29 countries, and a couple of countries are also in the pipeline. And then maybe just to mention that throughout this expertise, we saw that the way that it's done is WMO, first of all, mobilized, of course, WMO experts. And then we trained these experts how to collect the data, how to ensure that a tool is applied properly. And then our experts and ourselves also conducted country missions, meetings with the stakeholders, field data collection campaigns. We also informed and assisted countries before, during, and after the implementation. And then after every data collection and reporting process completed, we screened the results and reports. And then as a result, we gathered around 70,000 data points per country based on their station number, based on their staff number, based on their capacities and capabilities across these specific categories. So here, I would like to give you a couple of examples. And then throughout this practice, we observed that that resilience to the floods, drought, and cryosphere hazards depends on the things like that, if the observation network is functioning during the storms, if snow glacier monitoring integrated into the modeling, and then forecasting skills and uncertainty, the level of those, human resources, ICT, dissemination, redundancy, and last mile communication, and so many other topics. So these are the elements that we saw that determining the weather predictions are actually protect the people. And then we saw that the indicators usually that tracks the outcomes. And then that within our methodology, we saw that data revealed that underlying processes. So in some of the regions, we just saw that that they have early warning systems. They reported it. They have basin adaptation strategies, but however, throughout some of the incidents, their sole upstream station failed, so didn't report. And then their scenarios for glacier melt was not fitting to the purpose. And then they were not able to track the peaks, and then their thresholds were not dynamic enough. So then this showed us that how a country can report positively, but at the same time, operational data and cryosphere dynamics revealed that additional considerations for resilience on the ground. And then we expanded this work from these countries, the data that we collected into the categories that we started our discussions. And then what we see here is basically that for instance, if we are tracking the existence of early warning systems in basin plans and other topics, maybe the data behind is very often very weak, and then or the systems are not reporting. And then if we are investigating the coverage of the warnings, maybe their timeliness and accuracy and competencies are not on the required level. if we are reporting against the infrastructure climate proofing that using the data, then we saw that like a hydrological data might not be part of it, operational hydrology especially. And then if we are looking at like what happened, then we just seen that like impacts could be worsened due to the low frequency of the low forecast accuracy. And then maybe the countries can just say they have CAP early warning systems or multi-hazard early warning systems. And then when we see that operational realities maybe showing us that like systems can still be limited if they are not fully go following the international standards. And if everything is functioning, that like it might be that like a staffing limitations determines the service reliability. And then like if we are tracking the relocation and impacts, so then like we seen that like the hydrology is like requiring that like risk baselines to be more accurate and more dynamic. And then if we are focusing on the water stress and planning, then we've seen that cryosphere processes often missing the data inputs. And throughout this, I would like to just like ask some common questions for us, and then like for your discussions, that like it could be like how indicators can capture real resilience on the ground, if operational hydrology and cryosphere for evidence-based reporting could be useful. And then how can WMO and water communities support parties, especially for practical country-level implementation? And how can water and climate information improve coherence across the adaptation goals and targets, given that water's influence on adaptation priorities? And then what shared tools and methods can help countries apply indicators for planning, decision-making, and monitoring? And then finally, how do we keep process collaborative so indicators, science, and country needs evolve together over the time? With this, I would like to conclude my presentation, and I would like to thank you all for giving your time to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaya. Quite a level of detail, and that I'm looking forward to the discussion how we can actually use these assessments for the global goal. We have one more presentation before we open for questions again, and it's a pleasure now to invite Ingrid Timbu. Ingrid is the Senior Policy Lead and the Deputy Executive Director of the Alliance for Global Water Adaptation, AGWA. Over to you, Ingrid.
I don't know why I grabbed this. I'm not doing slides. Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to be here, and thank you to Stefan and the WMO for inviting me. So my presentation is going to zoom out a little bit from kind of just looking at the indicators themselves in the GGA, but why this is kind of important for national climate planning more broadly, and to see where water is already fitting into national climate planning and how the GGA and the indicators could be supportive of those processes. So we're 10 years into the Paris Agreement. We're now at the third round of NDC's nationally determined contributions, and also even further along into national adaptation planning. And we can see how water has evolved in these over time. And the good news is that water systems are already largely included in NDCs and NAPs. The first round, they were mostly just included as hazards, as risks, floods, droughts, sea level rise, et cetera. But over time, we're seeing in the maturity of these plans, much more detailed projects and programs coming through. And I'll give 3 examples of those here. Particularly on the adaptation and resilience side. So in Morocco, for example, their 2024 NAP places water and sanitation really at the heart of its economic development strategy, linking it to food security, to health, to urban and rural livelihoods. And this directly corresponds to several of the indicators, 9A, 5 through 7, but also 9B and 9C as well. And in their NDC 3.0, which was just released about a month ago, water is once again a key sector for adaptation, linking many of their national policies and strategies directly back to climate. And so that gets to, and also includes specific targets. So that gets back to indicator 9A. In Brazil is in the process of updating its NAP. Its first NAP was from 2016. They're now doing a process where they're not only having an overarching NAP, but they're going to have 15 specific sectoral NAPs. And so there's going to be a specific sectoral NAP on water and sanitation specifically. This is being coordinated by their Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, as well as their National Water Authority and National Institute of Meteorology. And so there's some really nice linkages there that should connect back to a lot of the indicators, not only within the 10 water ones, but also with ecosystems as well. And then finally, Sri Lanka. We were lucky enough to have Sri Lanka on a panel yesterday to kind of talk about what they've been doing, but their updated NDC is excellent. If you have not seen it already, I highly recommend you check out Sri Lanka's NDC. They have a full section on adaptation priorities within the water sector, with including 9 specific water commitments. There is one on integrated river basin management, which I think was mentioned earlier about kind of downscaling from integrated water management at a national level, but really getting down to the basin level. They also have an entire section on cross-cutting and systemic elements, and this includes water as well. And so that's a really nice kind of evolution and innovation to kind of really show how water is systemically important. The last thing I wanted to say about Sri Lanka is they're also very dependent on hydropower for their mitigation commitments. I know we're focusing a little bit more here on adaptation, but the reliability of water is critical for their energy systems, like many countries. And to Fatih's presentation that we just saw, as the water cycle is becoming more unstable or supercharged, as the IPCC likes to say, you know, that's really going to constrain the ability of countries to deliver not only on their adaptation priorities, but also on their mitigation goals. So that really underlines the importance of good data, but also like flexibility and being adaptive over time as we see that our water systems are changing. And so the last thing maybe I'll say about that is that I think it's really critical that countries start including water considerations more on the mitigation side of things. We aren't seeing that as much, but now as we're moving towards implementation, which is the implementation COP, I think that is being more recognized, but the linkages between resilient water and energy systems, I think, is really critical. So I wanted to just mention that as well. I think I'm going to end it there in the interest of time, because I know we want to do some questions, but hopefully that's kind of a useful framing. Thanks.
Thank you, Ingrid. We always appreciate concise presentations to save some time for discussion. Before we go to the interactive online part, is there any questions for the last 2 speakers? Kaya, are you still with us, I hope?
Yes.
Yes, I get, yeah, we hear you at least. Any questions from the audience for Ingrid or country examples? Is there somebody from Sri Lanka in the room? No. Not really. And there's one question in the back, please.
Hello, my name is Ludivine. I'm an adaptation expert working on monitoring and evaluation of adaptation in supporting countries in their BTRs and everything. So it's my main topic. And I was wondering, as you know, all indicators for adaptation are voluntary. And is there not a risk of having to disperse information or the information to like 1 or 2 indicators per country that are not the same, and in final there is not a global vision of what is the result of the progress? So is there anything on that?
Maybe more question for either Tom or Jose. So when will they be adopted now, and then can countries pick and choose? Is probably the question. Please, Tom.
No, I think it's a very good question. So I think if you ask the data experts, they will say that it's very important that we have some standardized indicators, because if the indicators are not standardized across countries, it is impossible to aggregate them meaningfully at the global level. So there need to be some standards. But having said that, of course, how many indicators an individual country would like to select will depend on their country context. And countries will always be free to make that choice. And in most countries, what you have in the global list is not going to be sufficient for national planning. There will be other indicators that will be important, additional indicators. And so what's important is that for those which are common, we are able to look across all countries and to aggregate them up. And we'll have to wait and see what the parties agree. But I think if there is a decision not to have any standardization, then I think it's very difficult to see how you can have a global goal.
I wanted to add as well. So it's great that we have experts reporting on the Paris Agreement. The point that I wanted to make as well is that at some point we need to bring things together. Like for us, from a thematic point of view, we go to our line ministries of water and sanitation. Not only they don't know what is a BTR, is that they couldn't care less. And adaptation is going to happen. Finally, we have agreed through thematic areas. So unless we start breaking down this silo that we are creating, Paris Agreement and thematic areas, I think we won't advance. And as Tom has demonstrated, in the water and sanitation, as well as food, as well as health, we know from a thematic point of view that we need to advance in resilience, that we need to monitor and track resilience advances, whether it will be voluntarily through the BTR. I'm going to start to say, and this is a little bit perhaps aggressive, but it's like we don't care because we are going to do it anyway. It's like we are doing it. It's like if the BTRs, if the Paris Agreement itself, if climate negotiators want to understand and benefit from the wealth of work and knowledge that we are creating, that will be welcome. Otherwise, we will do it. We will do it anyways.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there another question? If not, I would like to bring in Kaya again, and it's maybe again for the other three speakers, a question, there's a level of detail on data collection from hydrometeorological agencies on very detailed assessments of forecasting capabilities, lead time, and staff capacity, and so on at quite a number of countries. He was referring to a study of 29 countries, but there's more. On the other hand, we have this kind of a bit of a disconnect. I think Maureen brought the point up to how will countries be involved in data collection, how make sure that actually this data is actually utilized and for the global goal. So, and Kaya, are you still with us? So I was just wondering the kind of detailed assessments that are done by WMO and other agencies, how can they be incorporated and utilized? And I think there's a bit of a disconnect. Would you agree, or is that any comments on that from anyone?
Yes. I might kindly would like to contribute on my end. So, like, even though they are voluntary or their heterogeneity in reporting is let's say a real possibility, both in terms of methodological choices or underlying data quality, this can lead to incomparable metrics. So that's why, it's a very critical question. So the differences in the baseline assumptions and variability and how countries interpreting the measurement concepts, such exposure, resilience, or system functionality, these are very critical information. So based on our experience, we just saw that what worked is, first of all, like a donor requirement. So whoever that we prepare the project, they agreed these things, these data collections as preset conditions for understanding the real picture, measuring what we value. And then this turn into a standard practice, common guidance notes, definitions, and calculation methods to help countries also interpret indicators in the similar way out of this 29. So then, some of them could be optional, but still we were able to promote the comparability across this data collection. And then one of the advantages that we had, so our community agreed these things as WMO standard practice. So there is a guideline document approved by WMO Congress and published. So, and then this helped us to just establish this approach, which provides the consistent evidence base while allowing the countries to involve at a certain degree that they want, and we to also complement the parts that they needed support. And then throughout the experience, we just seen that peer learning and capacity support was very crucial. So then regional exchanges, regional implementation, individual implementation, and then an island setup. So we gone through the various different applications. And then this helped us to create a community of practice. And then also this community also helped us to improve the methodology again. So we, across the application, we also improved the methodology through this peer-to-peer learning and also WMO experts helping countries to learn. this also helped improving the consistency and how like our indicators within the application interpreted and understood and improved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kaya. Any response, any reflections on that? If there is, Jose again, please.
Sorry for taking the floor again. No, I just wanted to highlight that coming from the perspective of basic services such as water supply and sanitation, we do feel that hydrological data and monitoring is the foundation, right, for service continuity. Without that information, we cannot plan for continuity of services. We cannot design climate resilient infrastructure. So for us, it's the foundation. And we see that the contribution of hydrology to the GGA implementation is actually that, is translating climate signals into things that are actionable and identifying risk that we can manage for essential services.
Maybe just to add, so this is also getting to the role of the custodian agencies who will be the ones that are actually collecting the data and keeping it, you know, so, and that is an open question still in the negotiations. I don't know if it came up last night at all, but there has been a lot of back and forth between the parties about who is responsible for collecting, monitoring, et cetera, whether they're the existing agencies that have been doing it for the SDGs and others, or if there will be new groups doing that as well. So I didn't think it would be, this has been a learning experience for me as well. I didn't think that would be an issue that was so highly contested, but that's where we're at in the negotiations.
Interesting. And that in the light of the current budget cuts at the UN agencies, so it's an interesting discussion.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And also for countries are feeling stretched. And so it gets back to the funding and financing question of this whole thing. And that's the thing that especially low and middle income countries are raising constantly. Like this is going to be a lot of work to collect all this information.
Thank you, Ingrid. So even more so important is it to utilize on data collection drives that are already existing. Kaya was responding to one and showed some results from some 29 countries, but there's so much more which is out there, which need to be utilized in a good way. But in the next phase, as you were explaining, maybe there's a good checking back on what can be built on and how can we utilize and build on existing resources and investments. I don't see any hand coming up at the moment. If not, then we would go quickly to an online version. And I would like to invite Maria Kosonen. Maria, are you with? Yes, now we see you. Maria is actually the powerhouse behind all this. She designed this session. She developed this. A big thank you. I would be what would be I without Maria? Nothing, probably. No. And over to you, Maria. You have prepared some questions for us.
Thanks, Stefan. And no, you're doing a great job there. And thank you everyone for joining the session today, and also for the speakers. It's been super interesting and insightful and great discussions as well. So if you just please let me share my screen here so we can have some interactive questions. So I would ask you to please go to menti.com and enter this code below on the screen, or you can just go directly and scan the QR code with your phone. So we'd like to hear from you, our dear participants today, about what you think about the global goal on adaptation and all that. So please go ahead and scan this. Great. I see some participants joining. Perfect. Okay, great. So let's go for the first warm-up question here. So if you still didn't get the chance to scan, you can still scan your code here or use the code at the top of the screen. But please go ahead and put on the map, where are you from? While other additional participants are joining. So we just see a little bit regional and sort of balance where all of us come from. Might be a little bit tricky to pin yourself on the map, but just, sort of roughly on the map, where are you from? So you can put it there. Great. I think half of our participants have already put it there. We're still waiting for a few, so we see a full picture. Oh, so we have a lot of people from very different countries. I can see some from Europe, some from US, also from Africa and South America. Great. Okay. So first, we have a word cloud. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you think about water and climate adaptation? So just type one word, first thoughts that comes to your mind. What is critical? Okay. Resilience, floods, challenge, people, ecosystem, hydrology. Great. A couple more people can answer. Scarcity, yes. Droughts as well, very important. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. And next question, just to understand where you're all at with the global goal on adaptation. How familiar are you with it? So as we heard, some of our speakers have been very much involved, and maybe some of you are also having some involvement, or you might know a little bit of it, but not fully super familiar. Great. Thank you so much. Actually, majority of you are quite familiar, seems like it. That's great. And whoever was not, hopefully the session already provided some insights about it. And as we saw the water-related indicators earlier, quickly presented by Tom and also discussed by our other speakers, which area of the, which of these areas are you most satisfied with the proposed water-related indicators? Just, maybe you saw that there's a lot of information on early warning systems or WASH, or which areas do you believe is already well presented? So you can rank them in order of which area you believe is you're most satisfied. So you can drag them to the top of the screen and put the order that you believe. Okay, we have a few participants. We're still waiting for a few. Good. Okay, so at the moment, the early warning systems and flood and drought risk, people seem to be very happy with how that is reflected, as well as WASH as the third. Water availability and use is also there, as we saw. Yeah. There's also an indicator on water quality. Okay, so great. Thanks, everyone. And then a question of which do you believe are the most biggest challenges in incorporating the hydrological data into the global goal on adaptation? So drag the most important issue to the top. And I'm sure there's also plenty of others, but these are just some challenges that may arise. As we heard also from the participants today, there were some questions about whether data availability will be there. Financing. Financing is a big question as well. Where do we find the finance? Do countries have the capacity on local level? And then how to translate that data. Excellent. Thanks for your answers. And so from your personal perspective, how confident are you that your country has sufficient data to support the national adaptation planning? Okay. Again, quite a variety of answers, but we also saw that we have a variety of people from very different places and different countries, different starting points with their situation. But most people are still very confident, so that's a good thing. That's great. Okay, so my last slide was for the Q&A, so moderated by Stefan for our panelists. If you have questions to the panelists, also online participants or people watching this remotely, you can post your questions to the panelist here, and then our moderator can pick up the questions and share those as well with the participants and panelists. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Maria. Thank you. This is helpful. Well, in terms of having a critical mass for doing proper statistics is a bit challenging at the moment here on a Saturday morning, but we learned something. No, it was really very useful, and it would be great to scale that up also to other groups. Any questions for either Maria, Kai? Oh, there's a question online. So much. How do we access the slides? Maria, this is a question for you or for Rita, my colleague. How can people access the slides?
Maybe I can say I think we can upload them to the there's a WMO mini site for each of these events, so we can upload the slides hopefully for this event after the session, so you can access them there. Yeah, maybe I can put the link to the mini site.
WMO.org and then COP, and you will find your way.
COP 30.
Any other questions? So when will the goal be adopted? Are you confident we have this next Friday? Jose, question for you.
Probably last minute or out of time on Friday. I think it's been pretty tough. And there are many things, because it's not just the indicators, it's agreeing on the work to be done after. And also they have introduced now the negotiators an element on finance, which is making a fourth track, and we don't know how that one will go. I think there will be an agreement. Somehow I'm positive. I think, you know, the experience is telling us that over the last 4 years, resolutions either at the COP or at the SBs in Bonn, you know, even when they look very complicated, parties, I think they are generous and coming to an agreement. So I think we should be positive.
Good. We appreciate your optimism. Other questions? Colleagues in the audience, we really have 3 top experts here and 2 online to ask everything about the global goal. There is an online question I see. Maria, no, sorry, I can't read it from here. Why should hydrology be considered as a central pillar of the global goal rather than just a sector among others? Anybody has a reflection on this one? Why hydrology should be a central pillar? Please, Ingrid.
Yeah, well, I get back to the point I think I was trying to make in my presentation, that water systems, the hydrological system, really underpins all of the different thematic targets of the global goal on adaptation. It is not just the water and sanitation sector. It is essential for energy systems. It's essential for agricultural systems, for health, for infrastructure. for cultural heritage, ecosystems, I mean, everything. And so if we don't have the right data and we don't have the right management systems that are adaptive, that are flexible, and that can be adjusted over time as hydrologic conditions change, then we are not going to be able to meet any of the goals under the Global Goal on Adaptation. So it is a really fundamental question for countries to be considering. And I think they are understanding that, but there's just questions around data availability, the financing, and all of those sorts of things. So I feel confident, like when I come to COP now, when I would come to COP many years ago, I feel like we'd have to like always raise our flag to say, water is here, water is important. And like, we don't have to say that anymore. Everybody gets that it's important. Now it's just the practicalities of implementation. But, yeah.
Clear. Good. Okay, then we slowly wrap it up. Then I would like, if there's no question from the audience, I would like the three panelists, just one question. There's another one line, which is related. Hydrological data and forecasts, how can they be better integrated into the global goal to strengthen water security and early warning in a drought and flood-prone countries? It's a bit related to the previous question, but it's on data and forecasts. Fatih, you want to answer this one?
Yes. So by aligning the indicators with the core hydrological datasets, countries already collecting these and such river flows, soil moisture, groundwater, or flood and drought thresholds. So this, first of all, creates a direct linkage between monitoring and adaptation outcomes. So when we ensure that national meteorological and hydrological services, their forecasts are embedded into the national and local planning processes. So early warning triggers, re-elections in agriculture, water allocation, and disaster management, then those things can function. And also another topic that we are looking at now, the interoperability across climate hydrology and sectoral information systems, so that this interoperability only in that case will allow decision makers to access reliable and timely water information. So, and then also we are, my colleagues reflected very critical topics, so the water is transboundary. So when we promote the regional data sharing and common methodologies, especially in transboundary basin, only with this we can help countries to manage their shared risks and attract climate finance. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Then for the three presenters in the room, and also Kaya and Maria, when you on Friday, we assume Jose is right on that on Friday and the overtime, everything will be concluded when it comes to the global goal. So when you come to COP next year, what do you expect? When would we be happy? So we assume the goal is concluded. So what should happen in the next year that you are satisfied? Say it from your organizational perspective. Is that a clear question? Who would like to start? Jose starts, and just 1 or 2 sentences would be enough. Thank you.
For me, next year, I hope that we are back to COP and we have already had what is already in the draft text, which is a couple of workshops on capacity development and guiding progress towards the implementation of the framework. That could be when I could be really satisfied that this program is being adopted, and next year we have already progress with clarity as to how do we work together, thematic and Paris Agreement stakeholders.
Thank you, Jose. Ingrid, how would success look like for you?
Very similar to Jose, a clear mandate and roadmap. That would be amazing. That would be my wildest dream. So that parties and all of those who are involved in supporting them can actually take this forward.
Thank you. Over to Tom, please.
I would agree with those 2 points. I think from a data point of view, what we want as part of the roadmap is the regular review and check-in on how the data is progressing and opportunities to learn lessons across countries about the data that has been collected. And what I think we've learned from monitoring the SDGs over a 10-year period is that this is a continuous process of learning and sharing. And so we need to start now. And we need to think, okay, hopefully at each COP, we will see an increase in the number of countries which are able to collect the data they need to make the decisions they want to make. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And to the two online colleagues, Kaya, Maria, what is your, Ingrid called it her wildest dream.
Yes. So from
When you come to
my
COP next
perspective,
year.
yeah. So my perspective that would mean that success would mean countries have information and capacities so that they can make climate risk informed decisions that protect their people, economies, and ecosystem. And then we have progress which is measurable, comparable, grounded with reliable data on climate risk resilience, especially for water resources. And then countries can also begin translating agreed goals into measurable national roadmaps and reflect their specific climate risks, especially water-related ones. And then these common methodologies would help also tailor the solution and tailor the climate financing according to these needs. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, we would like to listen to Maria. What's your hope for the next year after everything is concluded Friday afternoon here?
I think our colleagues have already given some great answers on this topic, but I believe that having firstly an agreement on the indicators, what we're going to measure and what to track, and then secondly, to make sure that the underlying data that we use to track those is robust and is reliable, and then eventually helping and supporting our countries to measure that. So that would be, I don't know, maybe not in 1 year, but eventually that's the dream. That's what I hope from this. Thank you. There's
Good.
a couple more
Thank you.
questions actually on the screen, I see.
Yeah. Well, we were closing the session. Now there are two more questions popping up. How do we convince donors that hydrological resilience is strategic investment? And the process of the development of the indicators. I think on the process of development, Tom and Jose said quite a few words, but how to convince donors? Anybody has a final reflection on that point before we close the shop here? The next session starts in 15 minutes, I believe. Any convincing donors that hydrological resilience is a strategic investment is the question. Tom has an answer.
You take them on a field trip to somewhere which is drought or flood prone, and you leave them there to think about it.
Thank you. This would be a good investment, this field trip. Thank you, everyone. This was an interesting session. Big thank you to the four speakers and Maria for organizing everything, and I wish you a good COP. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.